Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, I'm still pretty sick here. So fortunately influenza has kind of cleared up and now I've just got pneumonia and well that is just dragging and it just seems to be taking forever to get better. Anyways, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who's been giving me well wishes in the comments. It really means a lot and well I'm doing my best to feel better and get back to a normal upload schedule. So bear with me on this one because my voice is still really not holding out that well. I'm doing my best though and we'll get through this. So the first thing here on the docket we're talking about is PlayStation 3 emulation on Android with RPCS3. I am not joking with you here, a lot of people are talking about this one. Unfortunately, there is no release or anything like that just yet. However, this has popped up on GitHub and well, it seems it's got a lot of attention. We're going to have to be patient on this one and wait and see what happens with this GitHub moving forward. I mean, this could be sitting here for years before we see any sort of release. I've got no idea on time frame. I've got no idea on exactly what's going on behind the scenes. But what I do know is it's probably not a good idea to go harass the RPCS3 developers to find out what's going on here. And if you take a look at the person behind this GitHub, it is DHRPCS3, who you may know is one of the founders of RPCS3. So while this is in very early stages, I do have hope for it, but I'm not going to be holding my breath. But let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. It seems that 2025 is the year of the start of PS3 emulation on Android. I'm very surprised to see a whole bunch of talk and a whole bunch of progress on the matter. We're going to have to wait and see moving forward on this one, but well, this is a very welcome surprise for the entire year. The PS3 emulation on Android scene has been pretty hot lately. Moving on, and we're shifting from PS3 to PS4 emulation and shifting away from Android and talking about PC. Next up here, we're talking about PlayStation 4 emulator psOff or psOff, or subscribe to Mr. Sujano, depending on how you wanted to pronounce that. Anyways, psOff Premium just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, 2025 February 23 is the latest update. And with this latest update, they say they are fixing some regressions that were introduced by a previous version. They've also added a simplified Chinese translation, and they've added some rendering, audio, and UI fixes that have been implemented. This is not the biggest of updates, but it is an update and progress is being made. And they do have an auto updater, so if you are using psOff Premium, it'll probably auto update. And speaking about PlayStation 4 emulation, next up we're talking about Shad PS4. And Shad PS4 has made even more progress. It seems that Rock Band 4 is now in game. Uncharted 3 is booting and now getting into the menus. Not playable, but at the same time, this is big progress. Fatal Frame 4 and Fatal Frame 5 seem to be getting in game. Dragon Ball FighterZ is now running, and they say here it runs at full speed on their Intel Iris Xe integrated graphics. There are some big graphical issues, but at the same time, the game is running. Let me know your thoughts about Shad PS4 in the comments below, and let me know your thoughts about these improvements. Are you excited about any of the games that were just shown? On top of that, if you do head to their Discord under Showcase, they've got a lot of different games that are currently being tested, and you can get a good idea of where things are at. Next up, we're talking about emulation on iOS, and if you've got an iPhone and you use emulators, you may want to pay attention to this. This could be huge. So UTM says early report shows that in iOS 18.4, Apple may have blocked JIT enablement through get task allow, the technique used by alt-JIT, side-JIT, Jitterbug, and similar solutions. They recommend avoiding updating to iOS 18.4 until there's more information. It seems as if an initial analysis has been performed, but I think we're still waiting for some more testing and also definitive next steps. This could be a huge thing for iOS, or maybe they can find a workaround and it's going to be a non-impact. And speaking about analysis, next up we're talking about a very interesting blog post here that did some investigation and may have determined that Retrobit stole fan translations to put in the reproduction cartridges. There seem to be 4 games in question here, and based on the analysis, the very thorough analysis, it seems as if Retrobit have lifted free fan translations and turned a profit on them. And interestingly here, the person even took screenshots from Retrobit's FAQ. And in the FAQ, they said, "We did not utilize any existing script or work. No, this is a totally different translation. No existing translations were used, and we did not utilize any existing script or work." But based on this extremely thorough analysis, it goes to show that it looks like they did. And it turns out that after that investigation, and I guess also some questioning, Video Games Chronicle is reporting that Retrobit has confirmed the re-releases contained uncredited fan translations. So they say right here in the article, and like everything we talk about, links are in the description below right at the bottom in case you wanted to learn more about it. After our discussion internally, we as Retrobit concluded that the final work submitted contained to a lesser or higher degree uncredited work. We've always had a successful understanding of our shared responsibilities with our collaborators, and unfortunately in this instance, we let our guard down. They go on to say here, and hopefully there's some positive outcomes. This was an irresponsible oversight on our end, and we take full accountability for this outcome and not verifying the submitted translation. To amend this situation, we will set out to reach those whose work was not recognized to offer a means of resolution. Don't know what that's going to be, but I'm very curious to find out. On top of that, they say they're putting future releases on hold so they can further investigate the situation and ensure that the other re-releases are not going to suffer the same issue. I'm hoping that this is not a huge widespread issue. Obviously, it's not a really good look at all for Retrobit, and this probably reduces a lot of faith from a lot of gamers in the company. I mean, something like this is super low effort, it's super unfortunate, and just taking fan translations and repackaging them, well, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of effort to do that. But moving from low effort to high effort, next up we're talking about a game launcher called Simple Launcher. For those who may not be aware, Simple Launcher is 100% free and open source, and it's an emulator front end that makes playing retro games a breeze, and it just got a brand new update with some nice new features. So at the time of filming, release version 3.10 is the latest update. And with this update, we've got a bunch of bug fixes, some updates here to emulators to the latest release, as well as new features. So they've exposed the gamepad dead zone variable to the user, and they've improved the game button generation for the grid view option. Now users can customize the aspect ratio of the buttons. Next up, this one is a quick one, but arguably a good one. We're talking about Xbox One emulation, or translation, with XWine1. And XWine1 now has Forza Horizon 2 rendering in game. And this is a pretty big step forward. Now, we talked about this one before when the game would just boot up and you could see the pre-rendered stuff, the intro video and all of that. But yes, now it goes in game. I mean, if you take a look here, you can see the game is running. Things are not necessarily the smoothest, but I mean, at the same time, there is some rendering going on. The car is rendering, and I wouldn't call this playable, but there probably are some people out there who would call this playable. Either way, this is a big step forward for Xbox One emulation, or translation. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation with Ryujinx, which still seems to be going on GitHub. And from my understanding, there's a brand new release for Ryujinx. So at the time of filming, version 1.2.82 is the latest update. And there seems to be a bunch of fixes and minor improvements here. They've even added support for DualSense and DualShock 4 LED customization. On top of that, it does seem that it's now defaulting to the Vulkan renderer instead of OpenGL. And they've also raised the minimum requirement to Windows 10. Next up, we're talking about the PlayStation 1, and there's a game here you may not be familiar with. It's an RPG called Prisoner, and if you're not familiar with it, I don't blame you. It was a Japanese exclusive released back in 1999, and it just received a brand new English fan translation. Don't get any ideas, Retrobit. It's worth mentioning that this is just a patch and it does require the base game in order to work. And they say here it's a little hidden gem of the game and that this was a passion project. And the developer went out of business after releasing this game. They say the music is quite good, the game has some challenging dungeons and puzzles, and the story is superb. It's a game that deserves more recognition, and hopefully this translation patch will help achieve that. If you've played this one before, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below, and if other people should experience this game as well. This to me is one of the benefits of fan translations and fan patches. And speaking about translations and patches, next up here we're talking about ports, and obviously a work in progress. So we talked about previously that GTA 3 had been ported to the Sega Dreamcast, and now the same team seems to be in the middle of porting Grand Theft Auto Vice City to the Sega Dreamcast. And a lot of progress has been made, and obviously there's still a lot to go. Overall, it seems the project is shaping up really well for the Sega Dreamcast, and I'd say the project is very impressive. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below, and I do recommend checking out the Sega Guru's channel for even more information. Next up, you've probably heard this one already, but it seems that people are already playing Assassin's Creed Shadows, and the game doesn't release for like a month. It is the PS5 version of the game that seemingly has leaked. And a lot of people are thinking that this game is going to get a day one patch based on the current condition of the game. So if you are curious about learning more about this game, there's probably a lot of footage out there online. And if you're worried about this game being spoiled, you may want to avoid looking for footage about this game, whether it's trailer footage or whatever, because chances are someone's got a video snuck in there with some spoilers in it. So just be careful about this one if you are looking forward to this game. And speaking about PS5, this is more of just a fun fact, or possibly not a fun fact if you're a fan of the PS5 Pro. It seems that PS5 Pro sales are not doing as hot as the PS4 Pro sales were when the PS4 Pro launched. Matt Piscatello, who is well known in video game analytics, reports that the PS5 Pro has fallen behind the pace of the PS4 Pro. Now, I am very curious to see what PlayStation's stance is on the matter and what their reactions are in terms of the overall PS5 Pro. Do they think it's selling well? Are they happy with it? Or are they going to consider it a failure if it doesn't beat the PS4 Pro? I don't really know what they're thinking. Let me know your thoughts about that whole situation in the comments below. Do you think the PS5 Pro should sell more than the PS4 Pro did? Or do you think selling a little bit less is absolutely fine? And what do you think the reason is the PS5 Pro probably isn't really hitting the targets that it should be? I'm just speculating here, but I'm assuming it's the price. Next up, we're talking about indie games, and you may start seeing this seal on indie games, whether they're on Steam or maybe somewhere else. Who knows here, but it does seem that this has some significance. So they say here, we're stoked to introduce the No Gen AI seal for indie games. Indie devs can use it on the game store page to assure potential players that their game was made without the use of generative AI. And if you are curious as to what that might look like, Rosewater here, which is an upcoming Western adventure game set to release at the end of March, has already utilized this no generative AI patch. So if we take a look here over on their Steam store page and scroll down, we can see it on the right hand side here where, well, it's clear as day. Let me know your thoughts about this patch or this badge or this sticker or whatever you want to call it in the comments below. Would this make you more inclined to try a game, or would you care about it? I'm very curious to know. And speaking about generative AI, next up we're talking about Call of Duty Black Ops 6. And if you're a fan of this game and you're not a fan of AI, well, you're not going to like this news. Anyways, here on the Steam store page for this game, it just got a brand new update. Go figure. So here is the update, and the update is a disclosure. AI-generated content disclosure. The developers describe how their game uses AI-generated content like this. Our team uses generative AI tools to help develop some in-game assets. Well, there you go. Now, this game does have a mixed overall review score, with the recent reviews being mostly negative, which I would say is very underwhelming for a big AAA game like this. Anyways, it seems that some of the recent reviews here are picking up on the fact that this game is using generative AI and blasting it for it. I mean, I could be wrong here, but I think this person sums it up pretty good. In-game assets made by AI, not to mention they also try and sell AI-generated assets to the public until recently it got disclosed. People basically now buying prompts made by Activision. It's no longer about creating good multiplayer maps, good zombies maps that people would purchase to play. It's now to fill the bank with AI until the next release of COD. Furthermore, this person here says, I played this game heavily after launch and put in over 120 hours. I had a lot of fun grinding initially, but the soulless use of AI within the game has really turned me off. Let me know your thoughts about this stuff in the comments below. Next up here, we're talking about Lutris, and if you're on Linux and you're not using Lutris, you may want to check it out. It's 100% free and open source here, and it's a game manager launcher. Anyways, Lutris just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, Lutris version 0.5.19 is the latest update. We've got some bug fixes and some brand new features. The emulator BIOS file location may be set in preferences. It now obtains the release year from GOG and itch.io. And there's now support for importing Commodore 64 ROMs. Next up, we're talking about Steam again, and you don't need Linux for this one. You can also have Windows, and I guess even Android if you're using Pluvia. Anyways, here, if you do have Steam, I do recommend checking out the latest Steam Next Fest. This one goes until March 4th, and while there's a whole bunch of demos for you to check out, I do recommend checking out their YouTube video, as there's a whole bunch of different games they're showcasing here, and it may give you a good idea of what games are offered. And you may find your new future favorite game here. There's a lot of indie games on display. Next up here, we're talking about Fable, and if you're looking forward to Fable, it seems it has been delayed until 2026. So there's a recent video over on YouTube called Xbox Game Studios Update with Craig Duncan. And within that, about 14 minutes and 14 seconds-ish in, they talk about Fable's delay. So they state here that Fable was initially announced to launch in 2025, but they're giving it more time for it to launch in 2026. If you're a Fable fan, I would say this is probably a good thing to delay the game to improve it as opposed to rush it and try to push out a broken product. It seems though that this is all par for the course. One of the top comments says it wouldn't be a Fable game if it wasn't delayed. Let me know your thoughts about that one. I mean, I'd prefer a delayed game. It'd probably be better than a rushed game. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. And speaking about delays, someone has made their delayed return to YouTube. It appears that R24 Games is now back. If you're a fan of Ronin24, if you're a fan of their content before with retro games, and also they did some retro movie stuff, they've done some retro toy stuff, they've done some horror stuff, they've done fight stick stuff, controller stuff, gaming tech stuff. They do a lot of different stuff on this channel. I'm curious to see what the future holds for them, but I'm glad to see them back. If you're a fan of these guys, you may want to check them out as they're now creating content again. One of their recent reviews here has them checking out the Victrix Pro BFG, which is that controller with interchangeable parts. If you're a fighting game fan, you may want to check out that controller review, or if you're a competitive gamer of sorts, you may want to check out that controller review. And last up here, we're talking about Android and Google and a potentially controversial app. Anyways, here, this one is generating quite a buzz, and the app is called Android System SafetyCore. And here's what people are saying. Google has secretly installed this app on various Android devices without users' permission. It can reportedly scan through your photo gallery and occupies 2 gigs of space. Now, if we take a look at this app on the Google Play Store, it's got a 1.2 star rating with over 1 billion downloads. That is quite a bit for a recently released app, and it goes to show that a lot of people probably didn't head to Google Play to rush to put this on their phones. It was pushed by Google. This app generated so much buzz that Google had to put out a statement to, I would argue, calm down some of the rumors, some of the misinformation, and some of the correct information. Anyways, here, Graphene OS has also made a statement on the matter, and they say that Graphene OS will never have this app. And they also say here the app doesn't provide client-side scanning used to report things to Google or anyone else. It provides on-device machine learning models usable by applications to classify content as being spam, scams, malware, etc. This allows apps to check content locally without sharing it with a service and mark it with warnings for users. So the intent behind it seems okay, but the execution behind it, I would say, is not okay, considering this was pushed to a lot of Android users without their consent. But I mean, this happens with a lot of updates. And without their consent is probably not the right phrase. Without their knowledge, because obviously you give consent just by using Android. So no, it doesn't seem that this app is going to go through people's phones to try to detect something illegal and then report it. It just seems it's trying to be helpful. We'll have to wait and see on that one, but at the same time, you can always uninstall it. All you have to do is go into your apps, locate it, and just uninstall it, but it may be reinstalled automatically with any sort of system update. And last up here, as a bonus piece of news, while my voice holds out, we're talking about System 76 and their upcoming desktop environment, Cosmic. And it seems that Cosmic is continuing to make big strides forward. It is still in alpha, and Alpha 6 has just released. So one of the new features they've added in is desktop zoom. They say desktop zoom can now be activated in settings accessibility from the accessibility applet in the panel, or by using the shortcuts super plus equals or super minus or super and mouse scroll. And it looks pretty nifty. There's new accessibility toggles for screen reader and magnifier. Desktop view is now supported. There's more scaling options and even more. This is a real big update for this desktop environment, and I think it's shaping up really nicely. Cosmic DE is being developed in-house by System76. I'm very excited about it. It's written in Rust. It's designed to be snappy yet super functional. I think it looks really cool. I'm looking forward to the beta release and then the official release of this thing. And one thing I love about this is it's not restricted to Pop! OS. You can install this if you're on Arch. You can install this if you're on Fedora and even more. It's not locked down to their own operating system, which is amazing. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. She's cuddling with Mrs. Sujano. I'm not about to bother her. Rosie has been paying extra attention to both of us as we've been under the weather here. I am getting better. My voice is, it's kind of shot, but you know what? At the same time, I'm still feeling better, so I'll take that as a win, I guess. Anyways, we talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate. Save your state.